Leadership Thread with Dr. Peggy Polonis. And now, Dr. Peggy Polonis.
Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Thread. Really excited to have here today Telly Hatzigiorgiou, New York City entrepreneur. Welcome to the show.
Peggy, thank you for having me.
Great to have you. But I'm going to read this because I don't want to miss anything. Hospitality entrepreneur, best known for creating dynamic nightlife and dining venues that combine craft, entertainment, and social energy. Wow. But you began your career as an investment banker, and you then transitioned to hospitality.
Yep.
So tell me about that. Let's start there.
Yeah. So I graduated NYU, and I did the classic route into banking, which was got a job at Chase Manhattan Bank in Global Securities, and I worked there for 4 years, and it was a situation where I started feeling unless I had a godfather or somebody looking out for me and up on the ranks, it would be hard to get up there.
Oh.
I was working there for 4 years, getting up at 6 a.m, getting there by 7. It was great. It was a great learning process. But at one point, for me, I started looking at, do I want to do my boss's job? No. Do I want to do my boss's job? And so I went up the corporate ladder, and at that point, I figured that I had to make a change. I had to pivot into doing something on my own.
So I hear two things from what you said. The first thing is a real ambition to do something, bigger and better. But at the same time, I also hear a very strong work ethic.
Yep. Let's
go back to a time in your life where you learned this. What was your family atmosphere like growing up?
My father always was very disciplined and very focused on work. He felt that you had to work hard, you had to save your money, you had to invest, and my mother always had a job also growing up.
And from what I understand, your mom still works, and she's how old?
She's 84 years old, and she works harder than most 25-year-olds.
Oh, my gosh. Wow, that's great. So going back to that time in your life, there was you said your dad worked really hard, your mom worked, so definitely that work ethic comes from there.
Yes.
Were there other values in the family that have followed you up to today that were important to you?
I feel that I felt at one point in my life that unless I worked hard, I didn't come from, I didn't have a trust fund, that my family wasn't wealthy. So for me, it was a situation do or die. I had to work really hard to get where I wanted to go. And I remember when I left the corporate world, I felt it was kind of like Alexander the Great would burn the ships. I got to go in. And I remember I was 26 years old with my first business, and I didn't have a day off for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I worked every day. The business was going amazing. But it was something where it was like your baby. You couldn't step away until I had it, going in the right direction and fully.
And you could leave it for a little bit.
And leave it for, and then I
supervise it.
Yes.
Yeah. So you left banking at some point, and you went into?
I decided to open up a pool hall in Bayside, Queens, which was, very. It was interesting. It was right after The Color of Money, the movie with Paul Newman and Tom Cruise, and billiards and pool playing became very hot. So it was a moment of, I think people love pool, people loved the social interaction. It was very recreational, and so I opened up the first place in Bayside, Queens on Bell Boulevard and Northern Boulevard.
And then after that, you went into hospitality.
Well, that was my first hospitality.
That was your first
hospitality. We opened up inside. In addition to billiards, we had a restaurant, we had a coffee shop, and it was a very interesting situation. New York was the only state in the country which would not allow alcohol if you had over 2 pool tables. Yeah. So you couldn't serve any alcohol at the time if you had over 2 pool tables. So that was, I saw a window of trying to get alcohol. So we had an association of all the billiard owners. We hired a lobbyist who did nothing. And then after spending a lot of money on this lobbyist, I got very frustrated. So I came back and I'm like, I'm not sure Anheuser-Busch knows that there's no alcohol in pool halls in New York. So I called went through the yellow pages, found industrial relations of Anheuser-Busch, called them up, and I said, I know you guys are spending a lot of money in advertising on TV and showing people playing pool and drinking a beer. Do you know that there's you're not allowed to serve any alcohol in New York? And they're like, no. What are you talking about? They said, we'll call you back in 10 minutes. They called back in 10 minutes. They said, in 6 months, we're going to change the law.
Wow.
Like, okay, whatever,
Yeah.
I'll believe it when I see it.
You didn't believe it, yeah.
6 months to the day, I got a call. They said, file for your application. I was like, whoa. And so we were the first ones to serve alcohol in a pool hall in New York because of that.
But that says a lot about you because you saw this challenge or an obstacle, really,
Yes.
and you found a way around that.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Where did you learn that?
I think it was something from both my parents. They always felt that you had to work hard and think of the way around. And one of the things that they always told me was anything's possible in this country. And that was something where I felt like I had to figure it out. I had to, somehow if you can't go through the wall, you got to go around the wall, type of things. And you have to find the door, or you have to find the opening. And that was my motive, and we got it done. And then our business went, catapulted, and I opened up a second room in Flushing, then a third one in Forest Hills, Queens, and then my fourth venue was Manhattan on 21st Street. And that was a whole nother, I always felt in Queens I was a big fish in a puddle, but then I always felt like I had to make it to Manhattan, because now I was a tadpole in an ocean, so.
Did you ever think of going outside of New York?
All the time, yes. I've been looking to open up in Boston, in Miami, but it's a lot harder. You gotta be, I feel like you gotta be like a sniper. You can't make a mistake in going out,
And you gotta be there. But it sounds like it doesn't stop here. I mean, huge, very successful in a lot of different ways. You don't stop, but you still have dreams to go higher.
Yep. I still want to keep going.
Yeah.
There's always different ideas and different things and challenges and I feel like you got to push yourself always, to go to the next level and learn.
And life doesn't ever get boring, does it?
Exactly.
Now you're the second born of two. Oh, the third born.
The
okay.
baby.
And there were two boys and
my older brother and middle sister and myself.
What was it like growing up in a family of three and you're the youngest? Usually the youngest is typically a pampered child, parents are more easygoing with the younger child. But it doesn't sound like that was the case.
They were much more easygoing, and growing up in Greece was a lot of fun. I remember my brother and my sister had it a lot harder. They had to be home by a certain time. 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, they had to be home. And then by the time I came around, I'd walk in and my father would be having his oatmeal, eating breakfast. I'd be like, good night.
But you watched your sister and your brother, and what did you think of, they certainly they were good at something.
Yes.
They had their own niche in the family. What made you belong in that family? What did you do that was different?
I felt it was a good place as a younger sibling. I always would watch what worked and what didn't work. So it was kind of like they were the test. They would test the road. Okay, they went this way. That was good. Or no, it was bad. No, don't go that way. Go this way. And so it was great having them because they kind of filtered through a lot of the mistakes. Not that I didn't make my own mistakes, but it was.
How do you feel about making mistakes?
You have to. That's life. You can't succeed as long as the successes outnumber the mistakes. I feel every entrepreneur, every person has done things. They they wished they had a vision, they had a blueprint, and sometimes it doesn't work that way. It doesn't.
Yeah. And speaking about that vision, what is it, that you ultimately want to do? Where do you want, how far do you want to go? What's your ultimate vision, the purpose in your life?
Yeah, I feel that I at this point, I would like to expand the brands as much as possible and do real estate. Like the real estate side to me was very exciting. I accidentally got into it was an accident getting into real estate in a way. But I feel that it was a great thing to do back in 2005 before the crash in 2008. Thank God I was able to hold on to after what happened. But I always feel that real estate, hospitality is more high risk, and then real estate's more stable. So I feel like, okay, if something went wrong with the hospitality, you
could fall back on the other.
I could rely until COVID.
That's true.
Yeah,
it changed everything.
Changed everything. Yeah.
You have children of your own.
I do. Yes.
Yes.
Two
And
boys.
so, looking back in your life, what are some of the values that you'd like to instill in them, or messages that you'd like to give them about how to succeed in life?
I feel that they have to pay attention to the details in life. I think they really have to work hard. I feel that they need to stay off the phone as much as possible. A lot of digital detox, I think, lately is becoming more and more important. And I feel that they have to understand pivoting in life. Like I feel it's important to say, okay, this is working. Let me go that way. This is not so working. Let me make a right turn. Let me make a left turn. So I think there's life throws things at you that you would never ever anticipate, and you have to figure out the off ramp and another on ramp.
I really like that word, pivoting, because it just, that's what builds also resilience.
Exactly.
In life and psychological muscle. But as you're looking back and you're unraveling this thread to your childhood, is there something that you wish you had done differently?
I wish that I had, part of me thinks I should have gone to graduate, like an MBA. I graduated at NYU, got my bachelor's. I think education never hurts. But no, I maybe started in real estate a little bit earlier. I started investing a little bit earlier. I think,
But nothing major stands out for you.
But I think they have to start early. I don't, like to start learning, because that's part of the process of learning is like, okay, what am I doing? You have a lot of kids these days that are not working hard. They don't want to work hard. The attitude is that there's something wrong with when you work hard, and so that to me is not
kind of
good.
a sense of entitlement at times, and then not really, being in a hurry to get there without putting in the work.
Correct.
Yeah, that's true. So you created different kinds of menus. It's offering, you were very creative with your menus. What does that mean?
So the second hospitality venue that I opened up was called Clinton Hall. And that's pretty much the three pillars of Clinton Hall's DNA is super craft beer, and we kid around. If you've heard of the beer, we don't have it, and we try to focus on like single batches, local breweries, hard to get, beer. Then the second pillar is fun, Instagrammable food, but that tastes good, family style that you could share, and then the third pillar is games. So that's when I started doing food, and the first thing, it went actually viral. We partnered up with a donut concept called Donut Project, which was getting a lot of attention, and we took a jalapeno donut from them, and we put mozzarella cheese, made a grilled cheese, hung it on a banana hook over a tomato soup, and we never anticipated what would happen. I mean, there was lines out the door. People were like getting upset, like, I just drove from Syracuse and you're out of them, like, what? Yeah. So
wow, that's amazing.
So that's how, yeah.
for a young person right now, you're still very young. You're very,
Thank
very
you.
successful, but there's a humility about you. What about that?
I think you have to take what you do seriously, but you can't take yourself seriously. You have to, you have successes and you have some failures, and that's you never know which was how it's going to go at the end of the day. You could dot your I's and cross your T's all day long, so I think you just gotta, appreciate what we have too, and appreciate your family and appreciate what we're here to do, and I think it's
That's kind of a life philosophy, it sounds like, for you.
Yeah.
And going back to what you said earlier, was food important in your family?
Always, always. I to this day, I always remember we always sat together. There was always a Greek salad in the middle of the table, and I never liked olives until I was in my 20s. So we always sat together and dipped our bread into the olive oil, and I'll never forget that. And on top of that, once we went to school and in college, my father always insisted every Sunday, wherever you are, you're coming home, we're having a family meal. So we'd, and then watch a movie. So it was...
and it's a very social thing to the food in Greece and
Sure.
eating as a family or
Yep.
with friends or whatnot. So
Yeah.
it can take forever,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So again, as you go back and you unravel this thread, because you are a leader in the industry and a very successful leader, and
Thank you.
what would you say are some of the core beliefs or ideas that you stuck to besides hard work that really got you where you are today that you would maybe want to transfer to young people?
What was important for me always is to do something that made you feel good. So if I was going to do a venue, a hospitality venue, it's someplace that I like, or I would work, like I would like to hang out there. I was never a person to just go in and do a paint job and open the doors. For me, it had to feel good to me to go in there. And the same thing when I buy a building, I want to make it and renovate it. And sometimes it doesn't make sense, to spend all that money renovating it. But it's something that I know when I walk in there, I want to be proud of. Maybe it's the Greek ethos, or so for better or for worse, because sometimes you're doing things like they're not the smartest business decision, but at the end of the day, it makes you feel good.
Makes you feel good,
Yeah,
and that was important. Yeah,
that was important, very important. That I felt that in whatever hospitality venue, the food has to be good. You have to have fun. Because for me, both my venues, Slate and Clinton Hall, they're about fun. So, I think we all work really hard. We're sitting behind our desks for 10 hours a day. We're on our, cell phones, and, so for me,
constantly
it was...
on.
we're it's, exactly. I think that's a good point. We're always on. You're always working now that we have a phone in front of us. So to go to some place where you loosen your tie, you play games with somebody, you put your phone down, and family, friends, co-workers, and to me, the games are really important.
So you did find a way to combine fun with work.
Yes.
I'm going to take you back to your very young age. Let's say sometime before the age of 7. What's one memory that comes to mind? Something that happened one time, not something that was repeated, but one thing that comes to your mind that you remember as a child.
I remember being very young, and I always had to look a certain way. I had to have a certain pair of sneakers. And my brother and my sister were much more relaxed about it. And Pro Keds were the sneaker at the time. And I remember I had to have them. They were more money than my parents should spend on my sneakers, and my father getting very upset with my mom, who bought them for me, and why she spent so much money on my sneakers. and that was a point in my life where even being at it was probably like 8, 9 years old, 7, 8 years old, where I was like, if I wanted something, I had to be able to get it, because it was for whatever reason, it was important to me at the time.
Do you remember that feeling at that moment?
Yeah, it was, and then at the same time, I felt a little guilty too because my father was upset, so it was I felt guilty that I had the sneakers. I felt like I wanted the sneakers. I felt my mom got upset, so it was. So
you had to figure out a way to make it on your own.
On my own, yes.
Figure it out, and I guess in some ways also give back to the family.
Correct.
Because that's.
Yes.
I'm sure that's something that you.
Yes.
Your life trajectory shows that you're a.
Yep.
Giving person.
Yeah, when I opened up my first business, my father was like, well, let's do this together. And I said, okay, you want to invest? And he says, yeah. And I said, okay, but you're investing to lose money. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, I don't ever want you to tell me that you said we're going to make money and we lost. So I just wanted, we're going to make money, but I'm telling you right now, we could lose money too. So it was, and every deal after that, it would be included. And I would say, you're putting your money in to lose money. Don't say that. And we never lost money.
Telly, it sounds like there's some really interesting elements that have come together to create this recipe.
Yeah, thank you.
That's you today. You talked a lot about being ambitious and really wanting something better. You talked a lot about hard work, having fun, being with people you care about, and having fun in the process. But you really stayed close to some of those values that you learned in your upbringing, growing up. And another thing you talked about is really paying attention to detail and listening, watching everybody else, and then figuring out how to do it better.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, that is a recipe for success. I really thank you so much for being with us today. I think we've learned a lot from your life trajectory.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Peggy. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of The Leadership Thread.